I'm sure you've heard the slogan or maybe even read the bumper sticker somewhere, "Don't California my Texas." I have even seen it posted several times in the comments section of my videos. Well, I did some digging and we're going to share the top 3 reasons why some Texans are not happy about all the Californians moving here to Texas, and if they are indeed valid concerns. So stay tuned while we get after it right after this. What's up everyone? Welcome back to our channel. But if this is your first time to our channel, we are very happy to have you because every single week we are dropping new videos covering everything to do with living here in Dallas, Texas and the surrounding suburbs. So make sure you hit that subscribe button down below and that bell for notifications so that you don't miss a thing. Now, my name is Kristen Carpentier and I am a licensed realtor here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and we are getting calls, texts, and emails all the time from people just like you who are interested in making that move here to the Dallas, Texas area. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out, give us a call, shoot us a text, or send us an email because we would absolutely love to help you make that smooth move here to the Dallas, Texas area. All right, so today may get a little bit spicy.
Seriously, it was spicy. A little, yeah.
Down in our comments, and hopefully everybody plays nice because we wanted to have a discussion about some of the fears that Texans have with all of the outsiders moving here to the Dallas area. Though I am not from California, my husband actually grew up there, so technically he would qualify for this. But you know what? We are pretty good Texans from what I can tell, and we love the state and have really adopted it as our own. And really, we can't be the only ones. So what the heck is everybody talking about? If Californians like my husband have made that move here, they love it, and have made a positive contribution to Texas, what are all the native Texans so worried about? Well, we did a little bit of digging and read some articles, of course, as well as pointed a few polls to our audience, and to get a better idea of exactly what the reasons are for all of this and some of people's concerns with all of the people moving here to Texas. Well, many of the things I was expecting, but of course others are probably going to surprise some of you. So we're going to share the top 3 reasons that some of the Texans do not want Californians moving here to Texas, and if there are any grounds really for them to be so worried about it. Now, we read in an article from MoveBudda.com that they released their 2021 and 2022 Texas migration report, and there were a few fun facts that we noted. Well, first up, Texas is the second largest state in terms of size and GDP, and the runner-up for the most populous. And of course, number 1 is still California. But the population density is about 110 people per square mile, which really is actually less than that of California and about a 4th as big as Florida. So they are not lying about the state of Texas. But that is not exactly why you're here, is it? Now, in terms of migration, Texas grew by 4 million people between 2010 and 2020, which was more than any other state. And also, this may or may not be a surprise that 1 in 4 of those who moved here to Texas were from California in 2022. This may be what so many people are focused in on, and which has caused a lot of them to pay a little bit more attention when Texas began to see all those California license plates driving all around our cities here. So as far as the Dallas Metro has fared, they noted that Fort Worth was number 1 in terms of growth, and that was followed by Austin and San Antonio. They also indicated that the city of Fort Worth was number 2, McKinney was number 3 in terms of where most people landed after all of that migration in 2020 and 2021. Now, the counties the majority flocked to are Collin County, Fort Bend, Williamson, Denton, and Montgomery counties, and they all gained about 150,000 people in just that 1 year alone. So a 2022 state-to-state migration study also found that 14% of Californians are considering an out-of-state move, while only 5% of Texans are considering leaving the state. So from our polls we conducted, we found that the top reasons that Texans are worried about outsiders moving here is the price of the real estate being run up and pricing people who've always wanted to call Texas home out of the market. So is this true? Is it the Californians running up the price of real estate here in the great state of Texas? Well, in this article, they dove into the data and also noted that the top search cities in 2022 to move to are shown actually right here on the screen. So as you can see, the Dallas Metro was well represented in the statewide data dump, and they noted the top 20 most popular cities in terms of search queries and correlated it all to real estate appreciation within those cities. So the number one move-in, move-out search ratio was Prosper, Texas, with a ratio of how 253 move-in searches to every 100 move-out searches. And prices there went from an average of over $322,000 in 2010, and by 2022, it was already up over $825,000. Now, this was according to the Zillow Home Value Index, and it's an astounding, I mean, seriously, think about that, 156%. Now, Frisco was ranked 12th with 180 to 100 ratio, and the prices there went from $283,000 in 2010 to over $702,000 in 2022. So the city of Frisco was up 147%. Now, Euless was number 5 in the search ratio with 211 to 100, and that appreciated 83.7%. And finally, Dallas was ranked lucky number 13 in the search ratio of 170 to 100, and the average home price in Dallas rose from $141,000 to over $345,000, and that rose 144.2%. So if you look on the surface of all of this data, you can make a quick assumption that it's all the out-of-state people moving here that is causing the prices to rise, and often over 100% within this time frame. But let's look at it a little bit more objectively. So Wes Miller is a senior research associate at TRERC, and he notes that while people moving to Texas do have some effect on the cost and the development, the anger that people are portraying on price appreciation is disproportionately focused on the new Texans moving here. He noted that often the people moving here were higher income earners that were relocating here to Texas. However, the home purchase decisions did not show the same change. This points out that people are moving here for the cost of living and would have stayed put where they moved from if the cost was the same. Now, this has been the trend since actually 2014. People migrating here do not want to pay more. He also noted that only 43% of new Texans were homeowners, and their median age is actually only 29 years old. So it tends to be younger people chasing jobs here, and it may not be at a life stage of really needing to go out and buy a home yet. So there's also no evidence that the out-of-state buyers are throwing down unusually high down payments or inciting all of these crazy bidding wars. So from what he noted, Californians are likely not the reason for the pandemic boom here in the Dallas Metro and other parts of Texas. The reason likely was due to the expansionary business cycle of our economy, the strong labor markets, and historically low mortgage rates that allowed current Texas homeowners to actually move up to larger homes and to areas that they've been wanting to move to for some time, like some nicer neighborhoods, up from Houston to Dallas, for example, while also being able to keep the same mortgage payment since the rates dropped into the upper 2% range at the time, when their mortgage rates had previously been in the 4 to 5% range. Now, this also was spurred by our pandemic, which caused a lot of people to start looking for larger homes since many people were staying home and needing more space because they needed to accommodate online classes, for example, or maybe you were working from home and you needed that quiet space in order to conduct your business Zoom calls. So the second concern that we did find was about the traffic. Now, the traffic here around the Dallas area can be pretty bad, and with more people moving here, it is only making it worse. So with the growing pains of people moving here to the Dallas-Fort Worth area, it would make sense that more than likely the traffic congestion, construction, they're all going to cause some pains. So is it the people migrating to Texas that are the cause of it, or is it just normal growth patterns of people moving from places like from the city to the suburbs or from different parts of our state? Now, there was an article by the Dallas Fed titled "Largest Texas Metros Lure Big City Coastal Migrants During the Pandemic." And they noted several patterns of the migration of people that moved here to Texas, noting where they had moved to and how many have moved into the area. As you can see, they show that the immigration was mainly to Florida and Texas, and the exodus out of California, New York, in terms of net migration. Now, of course, Florida was number 1 and Texas was number 2. And on that same chart, you can see that the top states for outbound migrants was by far from California. So they also acknowledge as well what we had noted in the previous article. So from the chart shown next to us during the migration influx, Dallas-Fort Worth was the big winner of all the people moving here compared to what the pre-pandemic migration was here in blue. And the orange is showing what happened during the pandemic. Now, one last look at some of the migration patterns. They were noting that the major Texas metros that the people from the coastal metros were moving from. Los Angeles, Long Beach, and Anaheim were number one. Those were followed by New York, Chicago, Riverside, and San Bernardino, California, which is actually where my husband is from. Then we had San Francisco, and also noting that people from Houston as well. So it really wasn't just outside of the state of Texas. And then we had Washington, D.C., San Diego, and Carlsbad, California, Minneapolis, and finally Phoenix. So it was pretty spread across the entire nation and even within Texas, as you can see that people moved up here to the Dallas metro area. They also noted some of the migration pains and how it contributed to raising apartment rents and home prices, as we noted earlier, especially at the time of the shortages in construction materials and labor. Additionally, the rapid increase of migrants to Texas has added pressure on existing infrastructure, such as our roads, our bridges, our hospitals, our utilities, and our educational resources. And if you're one of the people looking to move to the Prosper area, to somewhere maybe like Windsong Ranch, you'll realize just how awful that traffic can be up there off of that 380 highway. So it does seem that migration has played a significant role and really strained our infrastructure here in the Dallas metro area and a lot of Texas. So, however, it just can't explain all of our growing pains. So now I'm not a big fan of government spending by any means, but there are certain things that governments really should spend some more money on, and a major one of them being the handling of the infrastructure, so that businesses and residents of the state really do have that ability to do what they need to do. So it's only going to be remedied by the government coming together and people coming up with solutions to how to best handle all of the growth that we are seeing here. Because I would much rather see Texas leading the way and be an example to some of these other states on how we can do this cost effectively and not wasting our tax dollars for political gain. And as Forrest Gump would say, that's all I'm going to say about that. Now, the final reason we found why Texans have concerns about people moving here from out of state, and maybe the inspiration for the slogan, "Don't California my Texas," and I kind of thought it would be number one, but it is bringing outsider beliefs into Texas and changing our political makeup of the state. Now, this was the one that I was expecting to see a little bit of truth on, so I set out for some studies that may have given us some answers. Now, the funny thing is that since my husband, who happened to grow up in California, we were talking and I was asking him, what was it like living in California? Was it always a big Democrat/liberal state? And he was saying how back in the 80s, because, he's kind of old, when he was growing up in Southern California, everyone he knew was a Republican, especially his father. So he doesn't even really remember when it turned into more of a one-party state. And if you can remember some of it back in the day, the former governor of California was Ronald Reagan, and he became president of the United States. And he is considered by most to be the conservative ideology icon of the day. So California was not always a heavy liberal state. And there are still plenty of parts of California that really are quite conservative. They're just not represented as much in the state due to the population in a lot of these big urban areas and big cities. So ironically, all the succession talk is not just a Texan thing. You also hear it in California as well, with some sections of the state that really don't feel very well represented. Now, there was an article by Texas Policy back in 2021 that dove into the fears that Texans have of the people from out of state moving here to Texas. And they noted that when the population growth in the state occurs from people moving here, it generates fear from the natives and the established residents that the newcomers will bring their voting habits with them, thus turning their thriving new red state homes into the blue states that they abandoned. And it's a popular narrative here in Texas, but the polling says that's actually all wrong. Now, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, between mid-2015 to mid-2019, 3.8 million people moved to Texas. And of these, 2.7 million of them moved in from other states, and 1.1 million moved to Texas from Puerto Rico or other foreign nations. So surprisingly, about 40% of Texans weren't even born here in Texas. So almost 2.3 million Texans moved out of the state within that same period. And this resulted in a net inbound domestic migration of 461,000. Now compare that to 1.1 million immigrants moving from overseas. Now the net domestic migration represents only 30% of the overall population gain. At the gross level, 71% of the new movers to Texas over the past 5 years are from domestic migration. And it has long been the fear of conservative-minded Texans and the hope of the left-wing urban Texans that the new arrivals would tip the Lone Star State's political balance. So this is where it is a little bit mind-blowing, because I remember back during the 2012 and 2018 political cycles. In 2018, they conducted an exit poll in the U.S. Senate race between Senator Ted Cruz, the conservative Republican, and Beto O'Rourke, who has been the hope for liberal Democrats for quite a few election cycles now. It found that the natives preferred Beto O'Rourke by 3 points, whereas the movers favored Cruz by 15 points. Now, Cruz ended up winning the race by 2.6%, meaning that if it were up to the people who were the native Texans, Cruz actually would have lost that election. Now, in 2013, the Texas Tribune and UT Austin conducted a poll surveying the political orientation of California expats, and the former Californians were 57% conservative compared to 27% liberal. So after this, the Texas Public Policy Foundation conducted 2 polls of registered voters to test attitudes between the natives and the non-natives. And in January 2020, the poll of 800 registered voters found that native Texans supported President Trump over Hillary Clinton by a 7-point margin, compared to the transplants who supported Trump by a 12-point margin. Then from February to May 2021, in another poll, 3,000 voters were asked if they were born in Texas or moved here. And if they moved to Texas, then where did they come from? And the poll found that 40% of the people were people who had moved to Texas, and 60% of them were born here in Texas. And this ratio reflects the composition of Texas voters who are natives versus the non-natives. Then another poll found there was no statistical difference in voter preferences for either President Trump or Joe Biden in the 2020 election among the natives versus the non-natives. And in both samples, the support for the 2 candidates was balanced, with neither seeing an advantage. So in the 2020 election, Trump received 52% of the votes here in Texas, with Biden receiving 46%. So the polling sample slightly overrepresented Biden supporters while underrepresenting Trump supporters. They also found another interesting pattern that did emerge. The movers from other states were about 1% more likely to vote for Trump than were the natives, while the movers from overseas favored Biden by 9% over the natives. Now, among the domestic migrants here to Texas, Trump was heavily favored in the Mountain West, where Trump enjoyed 13% margin support of native Texans, followed by the 4-state region of Alabama, Kentucky, Mississippi, and Tennessee with an 8-point advantage. Now, for all of you Don't California My Texas people, the area with the 3rd highest support for Trump among the movers was California, where movers were 5% more likely to have supported Trump than were the natives. So the region with the greatest support of Biden was from the South Atlantic Seaboard region, where most favored Biden over Trump by 9 points, which was also the same margin as Biden was favored among movers who were born in another country. Now, while naturalized Texans preferred Biden in 2020 compared to the domestic movers, they were almost as conservative, 42 to 44%, less liberal, 14 to 18%, and far more moderate, 37 to 45%, signaling that overseas immigrants to Texas are up for grabs politically and likely taking a dim view on that modern left. They had 2 takeaways for the data here in Texas. First, Americans are unlikely to adopt internal passports because people are always going to be free to move about the country. Thus, the only way that Texas could really make itself an unattractive place to move would be to maybe adopt some of California's model of those high taxes and those heavy regulations. So, second, moving takes a whole lot of effort. I mean, I hate moving. Who doesn't? And it's usually the consequence of a big personal decision. So people moving here to Texas have their own reasons for doing so. They are shaped by their own attitudes, and as a result, they don't really necessarily reflect the prevailing cultural and political morals of the place that they really did end up leaving behind. So there you have it. I thought it was a really interesting article. I just wanted to share that with you because in my experience so far here in Texas, There are people from all walks of life. I'm friends with liberals. I'm friends with conservative people. I interact. I have friends of all religions and nationalities. I know a lot of the media's take on Texas is that it can be racist, phobic, maybe even a little bit backwards. But from somebody who's lived in several states here in the country and Texas now for close to 11 years, I'm also someone who has been open to meeting and getting to know others. But from somebody who's lived in several states in this country and Texas now for close to 11 years, I'm also somebody who's been open to meeting and getting to know other people throughout my entire life. So it's just not true that you can't find a place in Texas for everybody. Sure, the overall general trending of Texas tends to be that most of the cities and major metro areas tend to be more liberal and Democrat, while the suburbs and the rural communities tend to be heavily conservative and Republican. And that has been the way it is just for a really long time now, because Texas still leans fairly red and we really don't see that changing anytime soon. But in terms of the fears that Californians are causing Texas to turn liberal, it seems to be more coming from within rather than from those coming from California or elsewhere all around the country. Because people from all over the United States have been moving to Texas for many years. The state has a strong economy and a really high quality of life, which makes it an attractive destination for people from other states. Now, in recent years, many people from California and other coastal states have been moving to Texas, drawn by our state's lower cost of living, our job opportunities, and other factors like our no state income tax. And additionally, Texas has a long history of immigration from other countries, and many people from Mexico, Latin America countries move here to Texas as well. So overall, Texas is a very diverse and vibrant state with a population that is constantly changing and growing. So if you are considering moving here to the great state of Texas and specifically to the Dallas-Fort Worth metro area, don't hesitate to reach out. We obviously love helping people make that move here. If there was anything I missed, or if you think I was out to lunch on maybe some of this content, please leave a comment down below because I'm a big girl and I can probably take it. But I would rather share the content like this that helps people understand things better and not believe things blindly just because of a bumper sticker. And with that, until next time, take care.